CFS Unraveled and creator of the ANS Rewire Recovery Program. Welcome to a very special recovery interview. At about 4 minutes, this is probably my longest intro to an interview that I've done, because I feel some things need to be said. Today's interview is with Diane, and her story stretches most people's perception of what is possible. Her story is truly amazing and inspiring. In fact, I continue to be inspired and touched by her ongoing experiences since she recovered. Diane was sick with CFS and fibromyalgia for an incredible 31 years. Her experience started with post-traumatic stress syndrome after a home invasion. After 8 or 9 years of fibromyalgia pain, which was very difficult for her to cope with, her health suddenly declined and a most unexpected thing happened. And the fibromyalgia pain was suddenly gone forever. It happened as a side effect to some treatments for her lungs. No more muscle knots and pains, no more joint pains. But the CFS remained, and a herniated disc caused daily pain to be part of her experience again, and she endured 2 more decades of being mostly housebound, never holiday or trip away, and she was never able to return to work again. And then the most incredible thing happened, and she made a complete recovery. She tells of how her back pain ended in an instant in a supermarket, and how she made a full recovery from 3 decades of CFS in as little as 90 days. Wow, 3 months. That's amazingly fast. Perhaps this is one of my favorite interviews ever, but I still had some concerns about publishing it. Her experience is wonderful, inspiring, and of course it's valid and real. But I wanted to make sure that people listening to her story got the right message. That message is that fast recovery is possible. But if we don't experience that, if our recovery takes longer, that's okay. We just want to be making progress. My own recovery took 18 months, but I've met people who take 3 to 6 months, and people who take 12 to 24 months, and I've met people that have taken several years. You will hear all types of stories on cfsunravel.com. It was my privilege to be part of Diane's recovery journey, because she recovered after she enrolled in the ANS Rewire program. But it is an even greater privilege to know her afterwards, and to do this wonderful recovery interview 1 year after she first recovered. Diane blows any misconceptions about what is possible for long-term sufferers of ME/CFS, POTS and fibromyalgia out of the water. And she shows us that at age 71, age is no barrier either. So sit back and meet this amazing lady. I'm sure you will be inspired by her like I am, and I'm sure you'll find her just as endearing. She is simply wonderful. Well, it's my pleasure to bring to you another recovery story today. We have a recovery story with a long-term sufferer of fibromyalgia and CFS. Her name is Diane from the US. So welcome to the recovery interview, Diane. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing very well, thank you.
It's great to be asking you, and it's not a loaded question, so I always appreciate that about the recovery interviews. So, Diane, I'd like to start really at the beginning, so people can get a bit of an idea about your journey. I believe you fell ill about 32 years ago, is that roughly right?
That's right, yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Well, I suffered a severe trauma. I was attacked in my apartment in the middle of the night in uh, 1983, I think it was. Yeah, 1983, and and after that, I suffered from PTSD uh, and really couldn't sleep. I would often sleep an hour a night and then go to work the next day, and so I believe that it was the PTSD and the prolonged lack of sleep that brought on
Yeah.
um, chronic fatigue syndrome.
So it's, I mean, obviously that sounds like a terrible experience, a very, very scary experience.
Hmm.
Obviously, you had the PTSD and then the lack of sleep. So when did what happened? What were your first symptoms that started to come on? Other symptoms?
Well, actually, I used to play the violin, and the first symptom that I noticed was my fine motor skills started to go.
Yes.
And I think if I didn't play the violin, I might not have noticed it, but that was the first thing, and then and then fatigue started,
Yes.
um, and uh, and my stamina diminished, and I would have periods of time where I'd be okay, and then I'd have periods of time where I had these symptoms, muscle weakness, fatigue, no stamina, no energy, um,
Did,
and of course the sleep problems,
yes.
uh,
Yes.
and so that's kind of how it started. But then after a couple of years, it changed and kind of became that way all the time.
Right. Did you also notice that you started to get other symptoms like sort of flu-like symptoms and things like that?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I always felt unwell. Um, I would describe it as either like flu-like symptoms or a bad hangover, either one.
Yes. Yes. I
Uh,
think the hangover one actually almost fits better most of the time, doesn't it?
I kind of think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that toxic feeling, isn't it? Um,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
and so what happened when you went to the doctor?
Um, I actually had gone to the doctor for something else, and I just mentioned I had been mentioning when I'd go for other things how tired I was, and one day he said, "You've been talking about being very tired for a long time," and so he tested me for Epstein-Barr virus, and actually at that time it wasn't called chronic fatigue syndrome; it was called chronic Epstein-Barr virus syndrome,
Right. Right.
and or just chronic Epstein-Barr virus. And I had an extremely high titer, and so he told me he had me come in and he talked to me and he said that I had an extremely high titer, which indicated that I had chronic Epstein-Barr virus, and that I would probably be sick for 2 years. And
Interesting.
so I should make arrangements with work and things like that.
Okay.
Um, I was horrified thinking that I was going to be sick for 2 years.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's a long
And
time.
yeah, see, at that time it felt like a long time.
Of course. Yeah.
Um, but oh, the other thing is, and then of course it ended up being 32 years, or 31 years. But I also developed asthma and eczema. They came along with it.
Right.
Um, and had allergies, new allergies, and the ones that I had got worse. I already had allergies.
Yes.
I had digestive problems early on, the first 5 to 10 years,
Yes.
but I really worked on my diet, and that helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Oh, and
digestive
fainting episodes
and
I had.
fainting episodes. Yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about the fainting side of things shortly. But um,
So obviously the gut issues. I mean, the malaise, the fatigue. I mean, it's all there. How were you? Did you find that you would get flus and colds very easily as well?
Yes, every illness that went through the office where I worked,
Yeah.
I would get it, and mine would last much longer than everybody else's.
Yes. Yes. And so as it progressed, as I understand, things got worse over time as the
Hmm.
years went on. Um, did you? When did the pain start to become a problem?
Um, that was kind of early. That was a couple of years a couple of years in,
Yes.
that started, and um, I remember that I was taking Tylenol every 4 hours for the pain,
Goodness. Goodness.
through the night too.
Yes.
And I just ignored the warning on the bottle because I felt like I had to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Um,
difficult to bear it, isn't it?
yeah.
Where
Hmm.
did you feel the pain?
I felt it all over,
All over
in my all my joints.
your joints, yes, and
Yeah,
also in your muscles.
in my muscles. Yeah.
Yeah, and did you also develop any sort of knots in your muscles?
Yes, I did, but I didn't know that for a lot of years
Yes.
until somebody was trying to massage my leg when it wasn't, you know, feeling good, and found all these knots.
Right. Right. And then what? Found the knots all over your body, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, and what did the doctor say when you reported the pain?
He didn't pay any attention.
Right. Okay, so just didn't say anything.
He didn't really say anything. I don't think he had any idea how bad it was.
Right.
And I'm not very good at making a fuss, so
Yeah. Yeah. So
so.
just bored. So as the years went on, I guess the did you find the pain was getting worse over time?
No, eventually it did go away.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk to again. We're going to talk about that one first, I think, because that's quite an interesting experience. Because so you had all of the classic symptoms of CFS and fibromyalgia,
Hmm.
and things had been progressively getting worse, as I understood, for about 10 years. When
Yep.
something happened that changed the pain side of things.
Right.
But just
Yeah.
before we talk about that, at that 10-year period, I mean, would you say that you were progressively had gotten worse over the 10 years, or had some things gotten better, or was it up and down? I mean, how would you describe that first 10 years?
Um, Day to day, it would be up and down a little, but over the course of the 10 years, I was getting worse.
You're getting worse.
It was I needed more and more downtime,
Yeah.
even in my in my better times.
How did that affect your life at the time? I mean, your social life, your church life, your working
Well,
life.
I didn't go to church then.
Yes. Okay.
So I was working. I had to quit work after a couple of years.
Right.
Um, it got harder and harder and harder until I was, spending my lunch hour with my head down on the desk, and
Yeah.
um,
Just can't do it.
letting people would let me use their cars to lie down on the back seat during lunch and things like that. And finally, I just was forced to quit work,
Yeah.
um, which is kind of scary because you don't know where the money's going to come from.
Of course.
Uh, but
Was
but I
any
was able to
was
get some disability.
was you were able to get some disability to support you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Did they use a particular label at the time to pay you the disability? Did they say it was fibromyalgia or Epstein-Barr, or did they just say it was a mystery? Or
Um, I think they said it was chronic fatigue syndrome because by
right?
then they had that name.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. So then, so it's 10 years. You haven't been working. What's the rest of your personal and social life like?
Pretty non-existent.
Yeah.
Um, I did a lot of lying lying down and watching old television reruns and reading when I could, um, and I spent an awful lot of time alone.
Yes.
Um,
It's very isolating, very upsetting,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. I did have friends, but they worked and they were busy, and it was hard for them.
Yeah. And then when you go to catch up, they want to do something, and you kind of feel like you can't do anything.
Right. Yeah.
Did you stop playing the violin? I believe, is that right?
Yeah, I had to stop playing the violin long before I had to stop working,
Yes.
because I paired off. I was gradually pairing off my activities, and I of course work was the last thing to go.
How did you cope with all this? I mean, it's like your whole life seems to have stopped. No working, no social life, not even playing the violin. I mean, it's
Right.
a
It
pretty
was
tough
very
experience.
It was very hard.
Yeah. And then on the back of having experienced such a terrible trauma as well, um, did you? Well, let's talk about what happened next, because 10 years or 8, 9 years, something like this, of pain on top of the fibromyalgia pain, as well as the chronic fatigue syndrome, and then you got a cough that changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us what happened? So you,
Yeah, the asthma was very, very bad then. These days I have no asthma symptoms at all, but part of it was my husband and I had a couple of cats, and actually I met him while I was sick, but that's another story. but but he had two cats, and I turned out to be very allergic to cats, and that made the asthma really, really bad. And and then I had this emergency where I was really having a hard time breathing all the time. So went to the doctor sent me to a specialist, and he put me on prednisone and and about 7 different medicines all at once,
right.
um, and it all helped, but somehow mysteriously this combination of medicines must have somehow affected the fibromyalgia, because when the emergency was over, I didn't have the pain anymore.
Yes. Yes.
I have no idea why.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? And the thing about it is that the even when you stopped the medications, the pain didn't come back. Because
No,
you
it
only took the
didn't.
medications for how long did you take the medications for?
I don't remember. I was so
Yeah.
sick then. I don't
Yeah.
have a good sense of time.
Sure, of course, but it wouldn't have been a year. It would have been
Oh
a
no,
month,
no, it would
maybe
have been
weeks,
would have been weeks or a month,
maybe a
maybe.
month. Yeah. Okay. So there's going to be lots of people going, "What were those medicines?"
I know.
But it's an interesting experience. So, so let's go on a little bit further from that. So, were you in contact with a doctor at that time, like a regular physician?
I had a regular physician, but I hardly ever went.
Yeah, because obviously
For
they
one
weren't
thing,
able
it was
to
so
help
hard
you.
to go
Yeah, well,
anywhere.
too sick to go to the doctor. Isn't that a crazy world?
Exactly. That was the problem. I was too sick to go to the doctor, but also I didn't feel like he had anything to help me.
Yeah. Did he learn? I guess it sounded like your pain wasn't really paid a lot of attention to, even though it was very bad.
Right.
Did you tell him about your experience? Did he say anything?
No, I never was able to.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so that must have been a great relief for you.
Yeah, yeah, it was, except that I still couldn't do anything. So,
Still sick
I
with the
still
syndrome.
had everything else. So, it was a relief and disappointment at the same time.
Yeah.
Why can't it all be gone?
Why can't it all be gone? Of course. And because obviously taking all that pain medication, it's kind of dangerous, not really good for your kidneys and all this kind of thing. So
Mhm.
I mean, you must have been pleased not to be doing that anymore. Um,
Yeah.
but okay, so then we go on. We're 10 years on, and there's another 20 years to go. How does one sum
Mhm.
up 20 years of more illness?
I know.
Did you
And
go ahead?
oh, and it's some of the chronology is a little hard to remember too.
Yeah,
You
of
know, because
course.
it's such a long period of time.
Absolutely, that's right. It just becomes your norm. You don't really think about it. I mean, when we get sick
Hmm.
for a week and this happens and that symptoms, we go to the doctor and tell them everything. When you have 30 years of history, it all becomes a bit of a blur. Um,
Right.
but would you say then? I mean, at the 10-year mark, things obviously had been extremely bad. You had to sort of had given up many things in your life. Would you say the next 20 years, did things get even worse except for the pain? Or were they about
No.
stable or better?
For quite a while it was stable.
Stable, yes. Bad, but stable.
Right. And then and then I felt like I could start going for walks, but I could walk for only a few minutes.
Yeah,
So I started doing that, and then I would, when I felt like I could walk a little more, I'd walk a little more, and so I started daily walking
right.
because that was always one of my pleasures in life was going for walks.
Yes, yes.
So
So you
so
managed to,
that made me really happy. I remember being thrilled. I made it around the block, and I called my husband at work to tell him.
yes.
I was so excited.
How many years into it was that?
Um, it would have been 15, maybe
Wow.
16, maybe.
So you're saying that really for 15 years or so, you weren't even able to really leave the house very well by the sound of it, if you couldn't even walk around.
Most of the time. I mean, there were occasions when I did
Yeah,
when I feel just a little bit better, and I would leave the house, but it was always hard. It was always
yeah.
very hard.
So what's your outlook on life like at this time? I mean, before you started to be able to walk a little bit, what was your outlook on life like?
Um, I was doing pretty well because I meditated every day,
Right. You found that helpful?
and I think that helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and I had started some sewing um, because that I could do in very small increments. You could sew for 5 minutes and get something done,
Yes.
and not do it again till the next day.
Yeah.
And yes, it'll take you a long time to get a project done,
Yeah.
but you can do it.
Yeah.
And I would do that,
Yeah.
and that really helped my mental outlook.
Well done, Diane. I guess I'm always inspired and amazed by how people cope with the illness, and I think it's one of the most remarkable things about people with ME, CFS, and fibromyalgia and POTS is how they manage to just keep going, and I always take my hat off, and I always think it's good to hear, some of these coping strategies, just to hear, there's always something we can do, even when we feel absolutely terrible,
Right.
and even if it's
Yep.
doing
Exactly.
nothing, like meditation.
Hmm. Yeah.
And obviously that gave you a lot of mental support. I mean, with up to 15 years, and you had hardly been able to even walk, any sort of kind of distance. What were your friends saying? What were other people saying about you, or what were they thinking?
Well, um, I know there was at least one person who um, definitely implied that it was all in my mind,
Right.
and so we didn't stick it out very long.
Yeah.
But there were other friends who were really great,
Yeah.
who really supported me and could see how hard it was for me.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's good to see that we get at least some understanding. Did anything
Hmm.
change? What did anything spark this shift where you suddenly started to be able to walk? I mean, had you recently started meditation and then you were able to do a bit of walking, or did anything happen that allowed you? I mean, obviously we're not talking about a lot of walking, but it's at least being able to, get out of the house.
Hmm.
Was it just that you
Um,
decided you were going to do it? But how did this happen?
I think I'd just been feeling it. Things had been fairly stable for a little while,
Yeah,
so I just felt like I wanted to try.
wanted to try again. Yeah, because in the
Yeah.
past, I guess, what would happen in the past if you went to go for a walk or something? What would happen?
Um, I would crash. I would, you know, feel terrible and feel terrible for a while.
Yeah, like for a few weeks, you mean, or days?
Yeah, sometimes days, sometimes weeks.
Yeah. So it kind of scary to start walking at all, but
Hmm.
you
But
know,
I took it extremely slowly.
yes, okay. And then okay, so then you sort of get a little bit of quality of life back, and
Right.
I guess if we then look at the next 15 years or so, it's hard to sum it all up, but would you say that things pretty much stayed the same as that? You were still sick and couldn't do too much, but you were able to just move a little bit and walk tiny amounts?
No, I gradually was able to walk more.
Okay, very good.
Um, so I eventually got myself up to a half hour a day
Right,
of walking,
right. Okay. And so,
and that made me very happy.
yes. What would happen if you went over that half hour? Would you still get the flare-ups?
Sometimes I'd have a fainting episode.
Right. Okay. Would you also get like the fatigue and the malaise coming in the days after if you pushed yourself more than that?
Sometimes, yeah.
Right.
So it seems safer to stick at the half hour.
Yes. Okay. And so I guess is there anything else that sort of happened during this time that you'd want to share during this latter 15 years, or were things? I mean, did you go to any more doctors? Did you try any more strategies? Did you try any treatments over the years? A lot of treatments.
I didn't try a lot, but I did try some. Early on, I would read uh, in different chronicles, about the illness. I would read about supplements that different people would claim helped, and I tried some of those, and none of them worked. Some of them gave me bad reactions,
Right.
so I finally stopped doing that. I tried going to a clinic. Actually, a friend, one of my friends who was very supportive, took me to a clinic in Massachusetts and stayed with me there.
Right.
She was wonderful. But unfortunately, they claim to be able to cure chronic fatigue syndrome with homeopathic remedies and other treatments. But under their treatment, I actually got worse.
Right.
So that didn't do me much good,
Right.
except that it meant a lot to me that my friend was willing to do that for me.
That's nice, isn't it? That's really special. And so then, did you try engaging with your doctor again about this, or any other doctors about treatment for CFS? I mean, I guess the pain was gone, so that was at least a blessing.
Right. No, no, I didn't, because what I was doing was I was keeping in touch with the research
Yeah.
on chronic fatigue syndrome, and had I read about anything that would actually help,
Yeah.
I would have gone to the doctor and asked for it.
Yes.
But I knew that I would know more about it than the doctor did.
Fair enough. So, but something also developed, I suppose, in the later 15 years, as I understand, and correct me if I have got the dates wrong here. But you mentioned this fainting, and did you also get like orthostatic intolerance, like when you stood up, that you would get dizzy and all this kind of thing?
Yeah, not all the time though.
Not all the time, no.
No.
Okay. So it was
Like,
the symptoms were you'd stand up and you'd get dizzy, is that right? And sometimes you would faint.
hmm it was more standing for a period of time than
Yes.
when I got up.
Right. Okay. And Did you have any other sort of symptoms, like any cardiac symptoms? Like did you have irregular heartbeats or any feelings with the heart?
Um, well, I guess palpitations, but don't most people have those anyway?
Yeah, well, it varies, I suppose. But did you find that they came on during the illness,
Um,
like with the fainting at the same time?
let's see. Let me think. I'm not sure.
Not sure. No.
I'm not sure about that.
But they weren't with things that you specifically reported to the doctor, were they? Or did you ask the doctor about the fainting or anything, or had you just sort of...
Oh, I did. I did ask the doctor about the fainting, especially when I had a very dramatic episode in public,
Yes.
and so I did ask him about it, but he he just had me have an MRI of my brain,
Yeah.
and when it came out normal, he said, "Oh, it must have been a virus," and I said I didn't have a virus, and he
Yeah.
just ignored me.
Fair enough. So how many years did this fainting and some of these kind of symptoms go on for? Were they happening for many years?
Many years, yeah. Actually, that started early on.
Did it?
Yeah,
Okay.
within the first 2 years that started.
Right, and that what was all the way there until pretty much the end.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, kind of a
Yeah, and
scary
it would
symptom.
happen. Yeah, it is, and it would happen often in the shower,
Yeah,
and it would also happen often uh, whenever I'd exert myself physically.
yes,
And the last 6 or 7 years that I was sick, I did use a shower chair.
right, right. Yeah, but it's not a good place to fall. Not that any place
No.
is a good place to fall, but the shower especially. So
Yeah.
okay, and so again, but in this last 6 or 7 years, it would be like you'd exert yourself too much, and then you'd faint, but you wouldn't necessarily get dizzy or anything like that. Was it? Were you getting like periods of feeling dizzy and faint?
Yes, I did get dizzy.
Dizzy and faint. Okay, well, right,
Yeah.
and then actual fainting, um,
Yeah.
and but it wasn't so much when you were standing up necessarily, or when you were doing something like that. It would just come on more whilst you were standing for a while. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. So it doesn't quite fit the standard sort of POTS description, although there's many similar symptoms, obviously, with the palpitations and the fainting. So, did you also have like a lot of brain fog during the time you were sick?
You know, I had thought I hadn't. I had thought that I didn't
Right.
until it went away. Until I, because I heard a lot of people talking about brain fog, and I thought, well, I don't have, it's not that bad. And then when I started the different diet, I went gluten-free in the fall before I started your program. As soon as I cut out the gluten,
Right.
my brain got so clear.
Yes.
And I remember going to church thinking, I can understand what the sermon is about. I can follow everything.
Yes.
And before I couldn't. I mean, I could sort of follow it, but if somebody asked me after what it was about, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. 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 That's
So-
interesting. Yeah.
So I did have it, but I didn't really know it. And also, my husband would say sometimes, that I was, that I had brain fog, that I was, my brain was absent.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it. For some reason, I didn't know it.
Yeah. No, it's not. Well,
wasn't
you get
sure.
so used to your experience, don't you?
Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah. It feels normal.
Yeah.
It's what's normal.
So then, were there any other sort of really weird symptoms that you had? like any other symptoms on top of it? Did you have any problems like with smells or any other sort of weird symptoms that people would raise their eyebrows at?
Right. No, not smells. I had sensitivity to light,
Right.
and sensitivity to sounds.
Yes. Okay.
In fact, it would be horrible going to a grocery store with the fluorescent lights and so on. And just recently, I went to a regular grocery store like that, and it was amazing. There was, I didn't enjoy being there, but I didn't have any of that.
Yes.
It was interesting. I just noted that I was not having any problem there.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing after 3 decades? So
Yeah.
I guess the other question I would have, I mean, again, I mean, 30 years is such a long time. It is actually my view that PTSD is along the same spectrum of CFS and fibromyalgia, but the symptoms express themselves differently because PTSD is usually a psychologically triggered event, from a trauma, where CFS and fibromyalgia can obviously happen from all kinds of things. They don't have to have an emotional upset. Sometimes people have, an accident, or they have a surgery, they have a childbirth, they have an immunization. So there can be lots of physical things, over exercise, things like this. Whereas PTSD is in my view, is actually a similar dysfunction. It's along the same spectrum. So I guess the question I ask is, during that time, did you feel you resolved your PTSD symptoms? And how would you describe the PTSD symptoms as opposed to the CFS and fibromyalgia? Because that's normally considered like a psychological experience, isn't it?
Right, except it is in the brain. It is I think it's the amygdala.
Yeah.
It involves the amygdala. But I had flashbacks, and I had all the classic PTSD symptoms: flashbacks, nightmares, hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And that's of course why I couldn't sleep.
Yes.
So that was the PTSD, and the CFS and fibromyalgia were very different.
Yes. Yeah, the different symptoms. So how long did it take for the PTSD to resolve?
Well, the worst of it was over after 5 years.
Right.
The very worst of it was 1 year.
Yes.
And then it eased a little bit, and then after 5 years, I would say the PTSD was pretty much resolved.
Okay. Did you do anything in particular to help you with the PTSD?
I think the meditation.
Meditation, yeah. Did you have a lot of counseling as well?
I had a few months. I had about 6 months of counseling, but it was during the counseling that I discovered meditation.
Right.
Not through the counseling, but separate.
Yes.
And when I discovered that, I realized that was doing me much more good than the counseling was, so I quit the counseling.
Yeah. So, okay, so look, here we are now. It's 30 years down the track, and everyone's of course saying, well, what happened? How did you recover? So we're going to get into that. Now, you actually found the ANS Rewire program, my program. So most of the recovery interviews I have here, I've tried always to be, independent stories where people have all kinds of journeys, but yours is actually now through the ANS Rewire program, so I probably better mention that. I guess my first question is, I don't know, I'm always just amazed, because, Dan, I personally, after, I don't know how many years it was, maybe 4 years or something like this, I tried everything. I've been to, I tried things that were all sensible, and I tried things that were crazy, that I would be too embarrassed to even tell people. But, desperation will throw you, get you to try strange things, and nothing had worked. I think I probably gave up after the 4th or 5th year of being ill. So I just think how amazing that after 30 years that you're still looking for answers. Did you always think that? Did you always think you would be able to recover again one day, or were you just?
I the attitude I had was that maybe I won't recover, but I'm going to make the best of my life if this is my life.
Yes.
But I am open to the possibility that something might come up. That was my attitude.
I find that really admirable, and perhaps I find it admirable because I became so close-minded myself, because I had given up, after trying everything. So I think that is amazing, and I always find that very, very inspiring. So then you came across and tell us a little bit about your experience. I mean, how did things progress from 30 years of illness to being well? Because I guess the thing that's so unique about you is not only that you had 30 years of severe illness, but you actually recovered very quickly.
Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about your experience. What happened? You found the ANS Rewire program, and what were you thinking?
I read about, I watched your first 4 videos and read everything you had there, and I was thinking, this is the first thing that really sounds like it might be the cure. This actually sounds like it might be it.
Right. And then you decided to enroll in the program.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I debated. I thought of enrolling right away, and I thought I'm going to wait till tomorrow. I'm going to just sleep on it and
I
see.
think that's good advice.
And the next day I said, I'm doing this. I'm doing this because it sounds like it's going to work.
Yeah. So you obviously sounded like you were quite positively expecting to make that step. I mean, to commit to such a process, which again I can't help but say, but I just find it remarkable after 30 years, given the fact that I, petered out after 4 or 5. But so you decide you're going to do it, and sort of how quickly or was it that things started to change for you?
Well, actually, I had my first breakthrough, my first change, just 2 weeks in.
Right.
After 2 weeks, which was pretty amazing, I thought.
Yeah. So what happened? What kind of breakthrough?
Well, my energy changed. Let's see. This is a little difficult because I might have to go into some detail about the program.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, you share what you like.
Okay.
And
Well,
look, people listening there, obviously it's a bit difficult with the nitty-gritty details, but I guess ANS Rewire is a multilateral program, so it has many strategies, from brain training strategies to physical strategies. So you just share what you sort of the kind of strategies you engaged and what happened.
Okay. Well, it was the
Rewiring.
postural rewiring
Yes.
that that made the first difference.
Right. Okay.
And I was in a growth. Well, of course, I was starting to get more aware of things, because your program helps you to get more aware of
Yes.
what's going on in your body, and I noticed this intense tension in my upper back, in the middle of my upper back, in the grocery store. So I used a technique that I had just learned that morning in your lesson, to start releasing it, and I had to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it all the while I was doing my grocery shopping. And by the time I got out of the store, it was completely relaxed. But the other thing was, my low back pain, which had for years, was gone.
Wow. What you mean, right then, or over a period of days or weeks?
right then.
Right. Okay, that must have been weird.
It was weird, but it was also wonderful.
Yes.
And I felt, I felt a little more energetic.
What did you tell your husband, and what did he say?
I did. We were in line going out of the grocery store, and I said, "This is weird," and I told him,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Okay.
he was amazed.
All right. So then, what happened next? You kept progressing, obviously, with some of those physical techniques, and some of the other brain training and the other strategies.
hmm
Had you? I mean, the program also involves lifestyle changes and diet and things. Had you already done a lot of those things?
I had, yeah.
So they weren't necessarily new.
Well, some of it I had done, and some of it I needed to do.
Right.
I had made dietary changes, some significant dietary changes the fall before
Yes.
I started the program, and they made a big difference, but didn't get me better.
No.
But then when I started your program, I made more changes to follow your advice.
Yes. So then, tell us what happened. How did you progress from that shopping experience?
I just kept doing all the techniques and my energy kept getting better. Occasionally I'd have a day where I didn't feel as good, but generally I kept feeling more energetic.
Mm.
And then I had exhilaration going for me because I was exhilarated and about getting better. And I remember at one point, I don't know exactly how far in it was, but I just said to my husband one day, I said, I am going to get better. And because I knew then that I was.
Yes. Yes. That must have been a weird moment for you.
Yeah, but it was wonderful.
Yes. What did he say? I mean, 30 years of you sort of lounging around the house, struggling to get out and do anything, and now you're speaking like this. I mean, it must have been odd for him.
I think it was, but he was happy too.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. So, you progress now. Obviously, I mean, if you say you're progressing and you're starting to do more physically, I mean, weren't you worried that, because up to this point, if you did more than your little bit of walking that you'd build up to, or if you pushed yourself to do other activities, you get a flare up, you get sick, you get, all this stuff happening. I mean, how are you able to extend yourself? I mean, weren't you worried about that?
No, because I felt so different.
Right. Okay. So you were feeling, do you think you were feeling better before you were doing the things as opposed to pushing yourself to do them?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So you weren't pushing yourself with the exercise per se?
No.
No. Okay. And I think that's a really interesting thing to listen to, because some people suggest that you should just be pushing yourself and increasing and in a linear fashion. But I think just about anyone who genuinely has the illness knows that when you do that, you get sick, right?
Right.
So I think there's a real message here about listening to your instinct, that if it doesn't feel good, perhaps we shouldn't be doing it.
Right. Yeah.
So really, from 2 weeks to 9 weeks, I guess, was it pretty much a linear process? Did you at any stage go, or maybe it's not going to work, or did you have a setback where you start to doubt things?
There were a couple of days, not one day after another, but a couple of days where I was a little more tired again but it's a different quality of tiredness.
Yes.
It was definitely had a different quality to it. But there were a couple of days where I would be a little more tired, and I'd be just a little bit worried maybe I'm not getting better, but
Yeah.
then the next day I'd be better again. So
Yeah. You were still getting
so it
a little
wasn't
bit of that malaise, that toxic feeling at times, or was it just gradually
a little
improving?
bit,
A
just a
little
little
bit.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, you get a bit of a flare, a mini flare once in a while. Okay.
Right. Mhm.
And what about? I mean, you're going out and you start to increase your activity. I mean, you're walking and things. Um,
Mhm.
Obviously, you were still fainting. If you were doing more than normal and you would faint, I mean, this sounds really brave. Were you not worried about
Well,
this?
no, I was I was feeling better. I
Yeah.
was definitely feeling better. And then I did at one point have a fainting episode start
Yes.
while I was out walking, but I used one of your techniques and took
So
care of it.
took care of it. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So and then I guess things kept going, and it was pretty much at the 90-day mark where you made the brave proclamation that you had recovered. I mean, what's your life? Let's talk just at 90 days. I mean, you were symptom free, right? You've had all this huge list of symptoms for 30 years. Now
Yeah.
you're feeling like symptom free and you have more energy than you can remember, as I understand you said in that little interview. I mean,
Mhm.
what's going through
Right.
your head at this point?
Um I was I was very exhilarated.
Yes.
Um and uh what was going through my head?
Was it disorientating?
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
Yep. And it was kind of like, what am I going to do?
Yes. Yeah.
um, but that very quickly,
Yeah.
that problem very quickly went away.
I ask about this, Diane, because I think for most of us that recover, that that I know, most people tend to feel quite disorientated, especially when they've been sick,
Yeah.
very sick, bedbound or sick for a long time. You feel like
Hmm.
you don't know what to do with yourself. You almost don't even know who you are because suddenly
Right.
because life kind of, it's almost like I don't know if the word excuse is the right word, but it's like when you're so sick, you don't do anything in life because you're so sick, and now that is gone, and you sort of go, well, now what? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Um, so and so what are people saying around you? I mean, your friends, your family, your husband. 90 days is
Um,
not very long. It's like, that's like maybe you caught up with them once or twice for some people. I mean, what are they saying?
um, everybody is just thrilled for me.
Yes. Yeah.
They were thrilled for me. And you know, when I started, I only told a few friends when I started the program,
Yes.
and they were very excited for me because I was excited, thinking that I was going to get better, and they were very supportive. But even people that I don't know that well, when I tell them about it, they're very happy for me.
That's nice. That's nice. Did you go back to your doctor and were you in touch with the doctor at this stage?
Well, that doctor retired quite a long time ago,
Yes.
and I do have a doctor on the books right now, but I've never met her.
Ah, okay. So you hadn't been in touch with the doctor for some years.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, that was my way of giving up. I gave up on doctors.
Okay. No fault of the doctors there, if there's any doctors listening. So, okay. And so what did you then do with yourself? I mean, tell me how, I mean, obviously you're symptom free, but I mean,
Mhm.
you're obviously able to do more than that, than, 1 30-minute walk a day. Tell me,
Right. Yeah.
what's your life, what was your life like at 90 days?
Um. Well, let's see. Well, I had stopped going to church because it was too hard for me, so I went back to church.
Yeah.
And I took over all the yard work,
Wow. Okay.
and so that was kind of neat. And actually, I cleaned a bunch of things that had never gotten cleaned, during the years.
Yeah,
You know how that is, I'm sure. There's
absolutely.
so many things that don't get done.
Yeah.
So I took care of an awful lot of things that needed to be done.
30 years of housework.
You're right, and it made me very happy.
Who would have thought that housework can make one happy, hey?
I know.
And you started you were exercising quite a lot more.
Yeah. Hmm.
Tell us about that.
Well, I am. I had started Tai Chi while I was still sick, but I had to take a chair with me and sit down periodically. Um, I was able to dispense with the chair, and I added another class, and so I go to Tai Chi twice a week now.
Yeah.
Um, and I started taking much longer walks. I started going for an hour walks,
Yes.
whole hour. And let's see, and now actually, well, that now is not 90 days. So
No.
at 90 days, what was I doing?
I mean, you obviously your whole day you were busy. It wasn't just that you were taking
Yeah.
your hour walk. I mean, your whole day was doing chores around the house, and I believe you even started playing the violin again. Is that right?
I did, yeah, and I can't remember now exactly. Oh, I know when I started playing the violin again in December.
Yes.
This past December, I started playing the violin again, because that's very strenuous, and I didn't actually intend to start again. What happened was I thought I'm feeling a lot stronger, and I'm just curious how strong I am. So let me get the violin out because I know that takes a lot of strength just to test my strength.
Yes.
Well, I tuned the violin, and next thing I know, I'm working on it, and the next thing I know, I'm practicing every day, and that's kind of how I went back to it. And
Yes.
my husband plays the organ, so we can play music together.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So it's really we're really having a good time.
Yeah. And if we go beyond the 90 days, so I guess if we just look at this last year that you've been well now, you what else happened? I mean, I believe you started going on weekends on little all kinds of journeys and hiking in the mountains and things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been. I have a friend who likes to take long hikes, and so we started hiking together. For a couple of hours once a week.
Yes.
And but this past week we got carried away and we hiked for 3 hours.
Yes.
And it's in the woods. It's up and down hills and
Yes.
over rocky terrain,
Wow.
and it's fun. We bring her dog along, and
Fantastic.
yeah,
Fantastic. And what
enjoy
else?
it.
Tell us what else. What's life been like since you've recovered? What are some of the great experiences of physical things that you've done that you haven't done besides? I mean, I think hiking every weekend and walking every day for an hour is obviously great, and the housework and all of that. But was there any other sort of experiences that you had that just made you sort of pinch yourself?
Yeah, I had a dream of doing. I've been following the black bear research in Minnesota, and there's this wonderful researcher who does trust-based research so that he can, sort of like Jane Goodall,
Right.
so that he can study the behavior of black bears. And he holds these, during the summer, these black bear field study courses, and 8 or 9 people come to each class, and you stay there for 3 days, and you get to observe close up the behavior of black bears.
Fantastic.
And so as soon as I realized I was well,
Yes.
I said, oh, we have to sign up for a black bear field study course. So we did. And we went this July.
Fantastic.
And it was beyond my wildest dreams. It was just wonderful. And yeah, that was a pinch yourself moment.
Yeah. Had you done also any sort of trips, any other trips in this last year or things like that any other sort of things like that you hadn't been able to do in the 30 years prior?
Yeah, we went on a trip to Philadelphia to visit my husband's daughter,
Yeah.
and she had just had a new baby, so we helped her with the new baby. We went to help
Fantastic.
out with that, and that was fun.
Yeah.
And then we also went on a whale watch this summer, which was pretty exciting.
Had you done anything
That
like
was
this
it.
sort of thing before? Like whilst you were sick, had you managed ever to go on trips or travel or
Not at all, no.
no?
I had gone on a whale watch before I got sick,
Yes.
but not since I got sick. And so my husband and I had never been on one together.
Wow.
So
Must be kind of
we
weird
had
to be actually traveling and going, longer distances when you barely left the house for so long. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that one becomes claustrophobic, but 30 years being essentially, you know, very restricted, suddenly going away on trips. I mean, was that was it like very novel, very weird, or what's that
It was
like?
weird in a way. It's like there's this whole world out there,
Yeah.
and you don't. I mean, you. I've always traveled through books, through reading,
Yes.
but it's not the same as actually being there in Minnesota and hearing that wonderful Minnesota accent
Yes.
of all the wonderful people there.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
And-
yeah, and
And when you were like with the whale watching and things, I mean, did you ever have moments anymore where you go, "Oh, I shouldn't be doing this," or "I'm doing too much," or is that completely gone?
no, that's completely gone.
Yeah, fantastic.
There,
Look,
there are moments where I think I can't believe I'm doing this, but
Yeah,
never that I shouldn't be doing this.
yeah. Is it rude to ask what your age is?
No, it's not. I just turned 71.
Just turned 71. They say you should never ask a lady her age, you know. So I thought
I
I'd
know,
better
but
be
it
polite.
depends on the lady, and I don't mind.
Because I mean, obviously 30 years being very dormant and sick and everything, and we become deconditioned, and as we become older, and then for you to be doing all these amazing things, I just feel like I get a lot of emails from people who are in their 60s and 70s, and they sort of almost they wonder if it's possible for them, and I think yours is such a wonderful example because you have both, you're now over 70 and you have 30 years of being sick, which is a huge amount of time. So I think that is very, very inspiring, and nothing, we can say a lot of things, but nothing speaks louder than an experience and actions, does it?
Right, yeah. And early on, after, with recovery, I may have overdone it a little bit with my muscles, and I did have some muscle injuries, but I just did exercises to get them better, and they got
Yes.
better.
Yes, I love it.
And now I'm much stronger.
30 years ill, 71, and we're getting sporting injuries.
Right. Yeah, and recovering from them.
I do remember you were going for even at the 90 and 120 day mark. I remember seeing emails from you, and I remember you going hiking on the weekend for several hours, and you were walking every day for an hour. I even thought that you had been walking more than that at the time. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I remember it was quite a lot of walking, and that's how you got the ECB injury in your leg. Is it the ECB, the band?
No, it's the iliotibial band.
Ah, yes, yes.
The iliotibial band. So it's the ITB.
Yeah, ITP. And that's the one on the side of the leg? That joins
Yes,
to
it
the
is.
hip? Yeah.
It joins the hip to the knee. Yep.
So many
And
sorry, go ahead.
I found if I do squats and some other leg raises and things, and they keep it in shape.
Yeah. One of the problems that people have is that when we recover, one is recovering in terms of getting the body working, the symptoms gone, and getting our energy and all of that. But there's also rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation. The muscles are gone, and one area where the muscles are particularly affected is our core, and it's really common for people because these core muscles are so diminished from both from the actual illness as well as from the sedentary lifestyle. That we get all of these sort of issues, and that's a classic one. People don't think that their sore knees and their leg pain is necessarily related to their core, but these things are all interconnected. And especially a lot of people get lower back pain issues as well. You mentioned that you had lower back pain during your 30 years. Did that then, and you had that amazing experience in the supermarket. How has it been since then?
It's been pretty good. It's been good.
Oh, good.
My back's a little stiff in the morning when I get up, but all I do is walk around, and it's. I mean, I am 71, but walking around and it's fine.
Yeah.
So and I've been lifting things, carrying heavy things, and no problems at all with my back.
Fantastic, yeah.
And while I was sick, I had a herniated disc.
Right. You actually had a herniated disc. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's very strong now. My back is very strong now.
Fantastic. Look, Diana, thank you so much for sharing your inspirational stories.
You're welcome.
I guess I always the message is to people. It's great to know that it's possible, and everyone's journey is a bit different. I don't think people should be listening and saying, "Oh, I'm going to recover in 90 days." I think that was there were reasons why that happened, but it's not something that most of us would expect. But it's very insightful as to why it happened, which we probably can't go into in this interview. But is there anything you'd like to say to people who are listening? Is there any particular insights or messages or anything else you want to say?
Yes. If you do Dan's program, and you should, because it really works, do everything that he tells you to do. Yeah. Buy the book.
I think that
and you will get better.
That is a key message. Even when I wrote Cephas Unraveled, that was really my whole message, was that we need a multilateral approach, and that we need to tailor it to our own experience and our own symptoms. Because there's no magic cure, one thing that's going to just fix everyone. It's about doing that combination and doing what you need to do for yourself. So I think that's a great message. So thank you for sharing that, Diane, and thank you so much for sharing your personal and your very inspirational story today.
Oh, you're welcome, and I hope it encourages people to do the program, because there's so many people out there who it would be wonderful if they could get better too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for those kind words, and I look forward. I always look forward to your emails about the little adventures that you go on. So please continue to stay in touch.
I will do that.
No worries. Thank you.